What's up, everybody? Welcome to the View from Jamestown podcast edition. This is episode 65. This is the December 2021 recap edition / 2022 projection edition. And we are sitting down this morning with the full team, with the full gang for the first time in a little while. I guess we'll go my right to left. We have a Latin American operations manager, Javier Fernandez, VP of sales and marketing, Petrarca, TCC president, Robb Roach, and inside sales manager, Nicole Greenberg.
Hey, guys.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. There's too many people here I don't know who to look at. It's a nice change of pace here. How you guys all doing?
Doing all right.
Fantastic.
Good.
How about you, Benny?
You sound extremely excited over there, Javi.
As usual.
You always have so much pep in your step till we get to the podcast room, and then it's just like doom and gloom. But no, it's late December. We're actually right in Christmas week, depending when this episode actually comes out. It might be just before or just after Christmas. But we're wrapping the year up. It doesn't feel like December since it's not that cold and raining outside. I'd like it to be snowing, but it is Christmas.
Yeah, if it's going to be winter, it might as well snow.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Give them something to look at, maybe hit the slopes and,
Yeah.
not just be stuck inside.
Rain on Christmas just isn't the same.
Nope.
And that's
for
what they're
sure.
expecting, I guess, Saturday.
Is it going to rain?
It's going to rain.
Stinks.
Snow Friday, so we'll maybe have a Christmas Eve, a white Christmas Eve.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
Be nice if it was sunny and 70 after that.
Yeah. But this is episode 65, and rather than our standard kind of episode format, we've kind of thrown that out for this one. We're doing our, I guess, first ever sort of 2021 recap and then 2022 projection episode. We're all going to pull out our crystal balls and make bold projections for what's to come next year as best as anybody else can, I suppose. We'll have the Logistix Company on to do a freight section here later on in the episode. But jumping right into it, we kind of went back and looked over some of the prior recordings. It's been nice having the notes from throughout the year from the different episodes we did in 2021, seeing what the common topics were, the timelines of different things starting and coming out. One of the early ones we were talking about back in February, which was something that big that impacted a lot of products AJ's looking at, is the non-renewal of the China tariffs. So we had, or the renewal of the China tariffs, the non-renewal of the exclusions. We obviously have our big product, diamide, that primarily comes out of China, and we were hoping those exclusions would get renewed. That wasn't the case, and obviously something that still has remained throughout this year.
Yeah, that's still in place, and I know that folks are submitting new requests for exclusions, but I haven't heard any talk, on actual policy being changed or anything like that. So, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and so obviously the tariffs are still here. We're kind of hearing that the tariffs aren't going to go away anytime soon. They're not really in, I guess, the Biden administration's plans to get rid of. So we'll see what happens with China coming into next year. But obviously something that we're continuing to deal with, and obviously still buying a lot of material from China. I think a lot of people in the U.S. are, and just kind of dealing with the price increases, unfortunately.
Yeah, the tariffs continue. I mean, they've actually been back burner a little bit because there's been more issues coming out of China. I mean, that's 25% is a significant amount to pay for anything imported from China. But when you factor in, I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves, but $25,000 freight rates from China.
Yep.
Now you're really starting to see impacts. It's I guess things can always get worse.
Yeah, and has it played a big role in your business, obviously, because a lot of that material that would have come to the U.S. is now not price competitive in the States, so you're seeing it, I'm sure, a lot more in Mexico and Latin America.
It's going to other places for sure. So instead of coming to the U.S., the U.S. is not a good market anymore. It's not competitive for obvious reasons. So it has to find other homes. Yeah. So it's finding homes south of the border.
So that was a new competitive situation you were dealing with the beginning half of this year, and I'm sure still are dealing with.
Yeah, for sure. So we see that in acrylics, for example, we see that a lot.
More coming from China than historical?
Historical, yeah. Yeah, before it was coming to the U.S., but now with the tariffs, that was going South America, India, Turkey, other places.
Yeah. The logistics obviously continues to be a big question mark. We had notes from probably from all the episodes, but I know it was a big topic back in February as well as in our June episode, talking about the port delays, historic backups at the Port of Long Beach. I think it was worse back in June. I think June was like the historical, I forget what the number was, but the historical number of vessels sitting off the coast of Long Beach. I think it's since still is pretty bad, but has come down a little bit or starting to improve a little bit. But something that we were seeing back in June, though, some of those historic backups and severe delays on any material coming into the ports. It's
I think there was quite a bit of hysteria about that, and maybe
Yeah.
people prepared for it. I mean, like we came into Christmas and they were expecting to be shortages and inavailability, and we didn't really have as much of that, probably just because of the hysteria surrounding that. But the there's been some logistics solutions to keep things moving, but there's still, I mean, you go to any store and you still see empty shelves, and even in the chemical industry, we still are a lot of products that are extremely tight, unavailable. It seems to change the flavor every week. Trimethylpropene last week. Before that it was acrylate. I mean, it's still a broken supply situation that was started decades ago with our dependence on China for a lot of things chemical, and no investment worldwide outside of China. So I think we're going to be suffering that for years to come.
And when a lot of production went out in the U.S. and it was difficult to get domestic material, we obviously pivoted between Javier and Nicole's contacts for bringing import material. Obviously, Nicole, you were dealing with a lot of the packaged plasticizers and things like that, and a significant number of those came in via imports over the summertime. So you saw obviously firsthand what some of those port delays can be like, and getting yelled at by customers with why their packouts aren't done, and obviously something you were very aware of over the summertime.
Most definitely. But you know what? I think we definitely worked through it, and we're in a much better place now. So we're definitely not seeing the delays, especially in terms of logistics. Shipping. Getting a bulk truck versus totes or drive-in is, it's a lot easier to get a drive-in shipment. So that's also was to our benefit because, customers were able to get material that was packaged or whatnot, and, to stay up and running. So
And then packaging got tight. You couldn't get totes and drums.
Right. So we had a lot of different moving parts to plan, but I think we did a pretty good job, and we'll continue to do that throughout 2022.
Yeah, I remember when you started, I think you were having those meetings, and our logistics guys were like, oh yeah, we're going to order, 100 totes, 150 totes. And you're like, wait, hold on, pump the brakes a little bit. That's, that's a lot of empty totes, but it worked out well because, with how tight they got and all the delays, even just getting the empty totes inbound, it was good to have all those empty totes there.
Well, and you don't realize too, it's a very geographic business, so it doesn't logistically make sense to ship empty totes from, say, a contact in Pennsylvania to a repack facility in Chicago. They're scattered out throughout the U.S., so it needs to work on all levels, and that I think is one of the challenges that a lot, especially in the Midwest, that they're facing is the shortage of empty totes and drums specifically right now. So our logistics folks put us in a pretty good position. So cheers to them for that.
Could be a whole other episode in itself, I guess, is the shortage of packaging, and that's something I think we're hearing a lot more and more about. But maybe that's a topic for an episode to come, I suppose. I think we'd obviously make a big oversight if we didn't obviously mention the COVID impact specifically. Changed throughout the year. Back in the spring, we started seeing the vaccines become publicly available. So I know over the summertime, when I think it was our May episode, we talked about the pent-up demand to get out, to travel, to go to the beach, to do stuff like that. Durable goods were much more popular kind of that summertime, which then impacted obviously the freight side of things with not being able to get actual product in from China and the rest of the world. We saw that massive uptick in the Indian COVID cases back in May as well, which made a lot of people nervous with the high population in India and obviously some of the raw materials coming out of India. But, COVID was certainly a massive topic on a lot of different fronts throughout 2021.
Absolutely, it was. It still is. Unfortunately, it was as we sit here today. It's it's going to be a COVID Christmas. The Omicron variant is now. We're seeing shutdown of large sporting events and shows and NFL and hockey being impacted and sports being impacted, and people are still getting sick despite the vaccine. So I think that's going to be another major topic, I think, in 2022, unfortunately. But it's I think thinking back to summer, I think for me the biggest impact was services. Services. I mean, anytime you went anywhere, whether it was go to get a cup of coffee or you go to a restaurant, that a lot of times the service was horrible or the lines were really long because people were just out and about. They weren't going to work. They were working from home, so they were out and about doing things, buying things, getting out of their COVID prison, in a lot of cases, and out celebrating. So, but yeah, and with that came lack of durable goods, so it was kind of, it was a double-edged sword. We were talking about the summer and how things were in such tight supply. It was because of the winter storm, Uri. I mean, it was domestically that caused such massive impacts especially on the petrochemical industry. It was a hot rush for us to get, thank God with Javi's and Nicole's contacts, to get as much goods moving our way as possible to keep things moving. I think that our global contacts were exemplary, and thank God for those two that made those positions and changes, and were able to keep our customers supplied.
Yeah, well, I don't think anybody expected that we'd talk about that winter storm for as long as we did, and I think even really talked about it right up until the last couple months. I know it impacted a lot of products and production around the Gulf. I know glycol is something that you manage, AJ, was a big concern for a lot of people, with a lot of glycol production coming out of that region. So it was interesting and I think surprising all around that we talked about it for as long as we did.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of products haven't really corrected themselves since that happened. Glycols are still problematic. Like somebody declared FM on PG this week. It's obviously not related to the storm itself, but I think it's folks running their plant a lot longer than they should and delaying maintenance potentially. So yeah, we're still seeing issues from the storm. Hopefully we can get caught up sometime in Q1 and get back to some normalcy on some things.
Yeah, and something we talked about a little bit on one of the fall episodes was, it seems like the last couple of years we've had these historic all-time bad hurricanes and storms, but at some point they can't be historic storms when every single year we're having one of these or two of these. So we're, I guess, at the point where maybe call it global warming, whatever you want to call it, but it seems like these hurricanes and storms are just more and more normal, unfortunately. Something you got to plan ahead and deal with.
Yeah, fires, storms, hurricanes, wildfires, extreme cold, extreme hot. Last week was extreme hot in the Midwest with super winds that they've never seen before. So, yeah, it is. You're right. It's becoming the norm, and it'll certainly have further impacts in the future.
Yeah. Looking back to some of our early episodes and going back to look at some price updates, kind of track three of the major raw materials that we focus on, benzene, crude here in the States, and then the stock market in the form of the Dow indices. So all of the above higher. Benzene back in February was about $2.38 a gallon. Today it's sitting about $3.28 a gallon. So it's backward. $2.38 in February, $3.28 for December. So up just about $1. Crude oil was $56.50 in February, up to $72.25 here in December. Stock market 31,100 in February and 35,810 now. So all of those up, whether they're correlated or not. We've seen increases in all of those, obviously, which have led to price increases and things just being more expensive overall, which I think we're starting to see in some of these inflation numbers and whatnot. It's all very evident, I think, in those numbers with seeing how everything's jumped up over the course of the year. Yeah,
I mean, they talk about inflation of single-digit percentage. I mean, in our industry, it's certainly not that.
Yeah.
It's double or at least triple digit. So, but it trickles down slowly, and we've seen absolutely unbelievable since the 70s. I don't think we've seen the lack of availability and the prices that we've seen in 2021. And in terms of energy, my prediction is it'll go higher. I don't think we've seen the end to inflated energy costs, and as far as I don't know if we're getting into predictions yet. Ben, should we hold off on that?
Let's hold that thought just for 1 minute. But yes, it's obviously there's a lot more that goes on with supply and demand and how that's affecting pricing. It's not. I think when we first started doing the podcast, it really was heavily benzene went up X, the dip is going to go up X, but that's really hasn't been the case for a little while and continues to not be the case, as supply really is impacting pricing more so than anything.
Yeah, I mean, natural gas prices in Europe were spiking, just a couple months ago, and then we thought that was kind of curtailed, but now they're going way up again, and they're having problems getting Russian natural gas. I mean, energy values have been it's been a rocky road, and of course we saw energy values specifically WTI oil going sky high, and then it seemed like it was certainly impacted by opening the spigot on our reserves. Whether or not it had a direct impact or the new wave of COVID did, I'm not really sure. It could be one or the other. Benzene values, usually they're correlated directly to crude. That's been broken. Propylene values, even though crude is high, it's actually going down at this point, which is a little surprising. So all of these direct correlations are now indirect. They're not necessarily one equals the other, as you were saying, and it's not as well the same for chemicals, because chemicals have broken that. Natural gas and benzene are certainly impacting, as you mentioned, on adipic, and right now supply and demand fundamentals are really proving to be, adipic goes into nylon polymer. Nylon polymer is expected to really kick up in the coming year. Therefore, the merchant market for adipic is not as attractive, so they're pulling back. So these things, when we were more of a global supply and demand fundamental company, that's been broken now with our sort of silent war with China, and many other factors. So, that's what we're going to be facing in the coming year. I think still there hasn't been any solution.
Right. Yeah, something to continue keeping an eye on. I know in our projections portion of this, there'll be a lot to talk about on freight, but we have Joe Hassenfratz from the Logistix Company on to do a brief logistics 2021 recap, as well as a forecast from their side on what's to come in the freight world. So we'll turn it over to Joe. Good morning, Joe. How are we doing today?
Very good. How you doing, Ben?
Doing very well. Welcome back to the podcast, I guess we can say.
Thank you.
I think it's the third one, fourth one, something like that.
Yeah, all blending kind of together. This year's been pretty crazy. So.
Absolutely. We're gonna start calling you a regular here. But no, thank you for coming on this morning. Always great having you on, having a voice from the logistics industry. Obviously, we deal with it on the TCC side, but you guys are much more in the weeds and kind of know what's going on.
We try to
as best as anybody can with the logistics market these days. But welcome to our sort of 2021 recap, 2022 forecast episode, kind of closing out the year with that. I guess before we get into it, maybe if you want to just talk about TLC a little bit, introduce yourself for anyone that maybe hasn't seen the past episodes. Hopefully everyone's interested in our crystal ball for next year, so this episode gets a lot of views.
Yeah.
But for anyone that's not familiar with yourself and TLC, maybe just give a little background as we get started here.
Absolutely. So Joe Hasenfratz with the Logistix Company, sales and marketing manager. We're a freight forwarder, so we specialize in liquid bulk, dry van, LTL, import-export, and ISO containers, multimodal transportation lanes. So very diverse company, and if there's something moving out there, we typically have a way to move it, and if not, it's probably something that we're not specializing in. So very diverse though, and looking to continue to grow those opportunities that we've seen, especially over the past 2 years. So
yeah, great resource for TCC. Obviously managing a bunch of different types of logistics, whether it's totes and drums, trucks, rail cars, import, export. Guys are a specialty of everything. So
yeah,
a great resource, and
not much we can't do.
The plus side of that is obviously you guys are in so many different types of logistics. You have kind of a good feel of what's going on in those markets, and not just doing bulk trucks or just doing packaging. But recapping 2021, obviously a very interesting year on the logistics side specifically. I think a lot of the topics were probably kind of the status quo from 2020, and probably will be a lot of them will be lingering into 2022 as well. But I know there's been a couple core topics, the ports back up, trucking tightness, especially with liquid bulk that we've seen on bulk liquid chemicals. Obviously some of these steady historic price increases both on truck freight and ocean freight. But those are kind of the big ones. So, I guess starting off with the ports backup, obviously that's something we've dealt with all year and continues to be a pain point, I'm sure, for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in 2020 to 2021, we saw the major ports really get hit with, congestion that we've never really seen before. Kind of showed some glaring holes in the infrastructure that existed that some were predicting could potentially happen if there wasn't some sort of adjustment made. Those adjustments weren't made in time, so we're now all realizing the crunch that is all of the ports right now. So some of the smaller ports are also seeing a trickle over effect, and I think everybody's trying to outsmart the system right now.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, everybody is in the same boat, literally in the same boat, waiting out at the ports to have their product unloaded. So
Where do you draw that line from, like a bigger port or a major port? So like when you say smaller ports, so is that like the Savannahs of the the that still considered?
yeah,
big
and even
port?
Savannah at this point is considered maybe not even the smallers. Some down in the New Orleans area, any of the trickle down effect of throughout the East Coast and West Coast. The major ones, obviously, New York, LA, Houston.
Yeah.
Those are the hot points that everybody tries to initially see if they can get their product in. But inland ports as well. Chicago's a huge inland port via rail. So again, everybody's trying to maneuver whenever they can, pivot as quickly as possible to
Yeah.
get their product offloaded as quickly as possible. But it's kind of the unfortunate new norm that we're up against right now.
Yeah, and some of those inland ports, something I hadn't really thought about before, but that provides a unique issue too, because the port of Long Beach, you can have 60 tankers floating offshore. You can't exactly have 60 tankers floating in the Chicago River, whatever, however they get inland, but there's obviously much less room for error and backups and things like that. So I'm sure that's been a whole unique supply chain problem too.
Yeah, absolutely. The rail has been quite congested heading into and out of Chicago. So
Yeah. And that kind of brings up to the next point with the trucking tightness. I think a maybe positive byproduct of using some of these smaller ports, the Mobiles and Charlestons of the world, is with how tight trucking's been, you're really trying to get material into ports as close to your warehouse or end customer as possible. So trucking out of, I'm sure, New York and Savannah has probably been quite the nightmare, but maybe some of these smaller ports, even though there might be less trucks available, just a less popular or less dense area, has hopefully been one of those avenues people can use to relieve some of this trucking tightness.
yeah, I think we've talked about it the past few podcasts, but getting the container as close to your end user as possible certainly gives you a leg up in trying to get that out, especially before hopefully demurrage starts accruing. But
Right.
getting a truck in there to get it out usually is a little bit easier when you're saying that the end destination is only X amount of miles, as opposed to, my God, how are we gonna
Right.
get it to that destination?
Yeah, it's certainly been an interesting topic. And I'm sure people will be happy to pay a couple $100 more or whatnot to go to one of these sort of secondary ports if it means you can actually get it out on time or
Yeah.
close to on time versus,
Absolutely.
kind of who knows how long it'll take. So
Yeah, I mean, a couple $100 could be, 1 day of demurrage at some of the other ports.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I think something else we really saw starting in the beginning of the year and kind of throughout the year is some of these price increases on a lot of freight, whether it's ocean freight, truck freight, some of the LTL lanes. Obviously, you being more on the sales side versus the operation side, you're probably getting yelled at all day long by customers, talking about where this price come from or, why is this jumping up? But I'm sure that's something you've had to battle with all year long.
yeah, I think especially the first half of 2021, a lot of the opportunities that were presented to us were to see if we A, had capacity, and B, could move it within a competitive rate. Now it seems to have shifted to can you move it?
Right.
The old phrase of, I used to move it for X amount of dollars. I think people are realizing that X amount of dollars that you used to move on the same line haul is long gone. So
Yeah, used to could have been a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. Those are three very different rates that you would have seen at those times.
absolutely, yeah. That's unfortunately we're shifting to can we move it? Can we get it to our end destination? And I think once people start realizing that hey, this is moving on this rate, that's just going to have to be part of the added cost to do whatever you're trying to do.
So you on the sales side, a lot of your customers are coming to you saying, hey, do you have capacity for this? Less about can you beat this rate or whatnot. It's just about who can move what.
Yeah,
Or
don't get me
what-
wrong. If the rate
Within reason.
yes,
reason.
exactly. They're still very price conscious, and we have to be very competitive in that regard. But just having capacity gives you such a leg up right now. So with our diverse carrier network, we usually can find solutions for our customers, and that's key to our sustained growth.
Yeah. Would you say capacity throughout the year has gotten better, worse? Has it been tougher in the second half of the year versus the first half of the year? Or is it?
In certain regards, I think in the liquid bulk, I think we're starting to realize that what used to be a reasonable line haul for some of these carriers is no longer reasonable for them. Anything outside kind of the 250 to 300 mile range is now considered a long haul,
Yeah.
and they're so backed up with
What was it before? 500 miles, something.
Yeah, and you know, for the right dollar amount, they'd still entertain the offer. Now it almost seems to just be nosebleed pricing to kind of move along the request instead of saying no. They're just saying, hey, we could do it for this ridiculous amount. So, yeah, they have so many other demands locally within that 250 mile that if you're outside of that, then you're probably going to be bumped to the back of the line or just told outright no.
Right. So that brings us to 2022, of course.
Yeah.
I saw a good meme the other day. It was like 2022 is just 2022. So it's, you know, going to be a repeat of 2020 with how bad COVID's gotten and everything else happening. A lot of shutdowns and whatnot starting to come up here the last couple of weeks. But yeah, 2022, I'm sure will certainly be interesting. We're right here in the last 2 weeks of December. So I know you guys are probably talking a lot about January, or people trying to even get loads shipping in the next, I guess, before January 1, which is questionable at best.
Yeah. I think if you don't have it on the books at this point, you're up against it.
Yeah. But looking ahead to next year, I'm sure, you know, what's kind of the outlook for Q1, or even, I guess you could kind of even separate maybe just January and February, because I'm sure that'll be quite a busy time. But what's kind of your general outlook for what to see in the early half of next year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the theme is tempered expectations. You know, post-holiday, everyone thinks the trucks are all magically going to become available. Again, people are booking so far out in advance, or carriers don't want to book that far out in advance because they have so many requests as it is that they're kind of taking it a week at a time at this point. Post-holiday certainly will alleviate some of the capacity crunch we're looking at, but I don't think to the point that we should see the, you know, pearly gates open up for us.
Right.
And, you know, the Chinese New Year certainly will hopefully, you know, slow things down a little bit. But again, I think the ports are so congested at this point that even with those slowdowns, it's just going to continue to be, you know, an issue for the very near future. So I say tempered expectations just because I think it's a matter of trying to dig out of the hole that we're already in at this point. And I don't think there's just a magical pill that, you know, alleviates all of this overnight. So.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point earlier where it's, you know, I used to pay this or I used to get that, and that's the market is changing so quickly. Just because you used to get a truck in 5 days and now it's taking you 12 days, that's just kind of the market. That's kind of where things are at. It's not, hey, you know, this 1 week it's all of a sudden bad. It's just kind of the way that the market's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it'll keep getting worse. Maybe it'll start to get better at some point. But I think that's a good way to put it with the tempered expectations.
Yeah.
That's just you got to understand there's going to be delays and things happening, and everyone's trying to do their best. It's just such a shortage. It's the market we're in.
Absolutely. I think 2020 and 2021, we were already dealing with a major driver shortage as it is. We're starting to see that, you know, that average age of 55 isn't coming down.
Yeah.
And when we talk about individuals that, you know, due to 2020 and 2021 not coming back into the workforce, there's a sizable chunk that's that 60 to 70 age range that of those drivers that are just not coming back. So they were into early retirement as a result of all of this, and we're just never going to see those again. So that on top of it just kind of compounds the issue.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit before we started recording about kind of plans for next year, what people can do. And we kind of talked about this idea of sort of getting creative, whether it's looking at totes, which might have a little bit better availability than trucks, short-term on-site storage, potentially looking at rail or intermodal if you haven't in the past.
Yep.
I'm sure that's something you guys are trying to preach to customers. And
Absolutely.
a big benefit to using TLC is you guys have your hands in all these different types of logistics. But I'm sure getting creative is going to be a big part of your pitch on the sales side for next year with trying to temper expectations and you know, get stuff moved, get material to customers. That's obviously the end game.
Absolutely. I mean, from a shipping standpoint, you know, being able to utilize an ISO tank and move that multimodally instead of just hoping that a liquid tank truck will kind of solve all your issues. People are going to have to start getting creative. And I think that also comes down to the end customer as well. So often, you know, especially pre-COVID, we saw, hey, we need this truck enabled with this hose or center load and rear load. And I think you're going to have to start seeing some companies either adjust those expectations or look at their infrastructure themselves to say, hey, why do we need that? Is there something that we can adjust on our side to allow for greater capacity for their demands? There something
making your freight more appealing? I think we talked about, right?
Amen. Yeah, I think that's really what it is, and or just allow your end user to get that product, you know, and I think that's really what it comes down to.
Well, we'll certainly see what 2022 has to bring. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's going to be an interesting, especially January and first quarter. Excited to start getting back to some of these regular trade shows, getting out and talking to people, seeing what's going on in the market. Hopefully have a more normal calendar year of trade shows and events, which I'm sure we'll be able to see TLC at, for the springtime. So looking forward to getting back out, seeing people, and seeing what happens for Q1.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what variants come up that might hopefully not stifle that, but
Yeah.
it seems to be kind of the current environment we're dealing with. So
Yeah.
we'll be out there. We'll be present at a lot of those trade shows, and looking forward to meeting with people face to face again, and building our network. So.
Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you again for coming on. I'm excited to have you on for a couple more episodes in 2022. We'll see how
Absolutely.
correct some of our projections were, and if any customers or accounts are taking advantage of some of these creative supply chain solutions. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say come Q1 to see what the market looks like. But appreciate having you on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great, Ben. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe. All right, moving on. This is the fun part of the episode where we all get to pull out our crystal balls that I know you guys all keep in your pocket and make some very accurate projections for next year. No, it's tough to predict the future. It's tough to predict what's to come, but I think there is some writing on the walls for what's to come and what we're going to see. I know we started talking about a little bit just in the prior section, but some obvious things I think coming up that we can take a look at for next year. I know one of the big things stemming off the freight side is that Q1 supply is going to be extremely difficult. We're already seeing a lot of issues with trucking and freight, and I think the first half of January, or all of January and the first half of February will be especially limited. We were just talking on our office meeting the other day about people trying to get material right after the new year so they don't have it for their year-end inventories, but there's going to be a big bottleneck, or bigger than what there currently is on the, especially on the trucking side, coming in right after the new year.
I feel like I've been talking a lot, but I think that's one of the problems we're going to be facing. I mean, let's start with automotive. We haven't had much of an automotive industry in 2021 because of the chips and motherboards and things like that. And, you go by any auto dealer, there's zero inventory there. So we're expecting automotive to really start to pick up in the beginning of 2022. And with freight already being probably the most exasperated problem we're dealing with right now, and getting worse with that added demand, I think that we could be looking at further impacts on especially liquid bulk. As Nicole mentioned earlier, dry bulk isn't as bad. We're keeping our customers supplied with totes and drums where we can't get liquid bulk to go outside of 500 miles. The problem is the electronic logging devices and the electronic logging mandates and the lack of drivers means that trucking companies are calling the shots.
Yep.
And they're saying, hey, when it comes to a tank truck that we want to move from Newark to Houston, we don't want that business.
Yep.
Because we can turn that truck over within a 500-mile radius, every single day.
Make more money quicker.
Make more money. And, and so, I think that's going to be something that once we've seen, a slowdown in demand, both for maybe accounting principles at year end, but also because other raw materials weren't available and they're expecting to get better supply of other raw materials and then need our raw materials in the new year.
Yep.
So there's always that quiet period coming to year end, and it's been a real quiet period just in the last couple of weeks, and people taking vacation because they haven't taken vacation for this whole year because of COVID, so they had to take a lot of vacation. So I think that, we're going to see everybody screaming in January for product, and they're not going to be able to get it if it's a long freight haul. So, what we offer as a distribution company by giving solutions to people that need raw materials when it comes to different types of products and packaged goods and different packaging and getting them the product, I think will be invaluable.
Yeah, and I know, Javi, your quieter period was more so in November because people don't want to buy for December, but I'm sure you've been busy this month with people trying to plan for January. How's the outlook for Q1?
Yeah, November usually is quiet for me because of inventory thing, the accounting principles. But January is picking up. December is being busy. It's been busy. People are gearing up for January and February. So I'm seeing an uptick on business. for sure.
More so than what was in Q4? Or was it like a normal January? You think
No,
it's busier than most Januarys?
abnormal.
Yeah.
Abnormal, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of customers that we talk to still have very low inventories of their finished goods, so it's going to take a while to get caught up. And I think things are going to be real strong in Q1 of 2022.
And another thing that they're planning is planning around for China shipments around the Chinese New Year. We have to
And the Olympics.
And the Olympics.
Double whammy.
Double whammy. So
it's gonna get messy.
It's gonna get messy. So we're planning around that. So because there's gonna be there are gonna be two periods of non-working plans.
It's probably a good 3-4 weeks, like back to back between the New Year and the Olympics. So that'll be interesting. Looking ahead to next year, I think there's going to be a lot of price uncertainty. Something we've talked about a little bit. I know the Fed just announced increasing rates, so that may impact demand on houses, new houses, used houses, existing houses. I think Q1 will probably keep pricing relatively high in general, just because supply will be limited and freight continues to be expensive, and just a matter to see what happens in Q2 or Q3 if things might improve a little bit on the price side, or if things are going to remain tight and expensive. What do you guys think on the price front? What are you guys seeing for pricing, at least coming into Q1?
Well, we saw that stat that the U.S. is 6 million homes short net or something like that. Like that demand. Like even with higher interest rates, like you think that the housing demand or the demand for building materials is still gonna remain for a while until that gets closer to even. Yeah. But I don't know. I've told everyone I've stopped making predictions because how wrong I've been the last year and a half. But we will see.
Yeah, I think the housing thing is interesting. That I was really shocked because they announced that they're going to increase the rates 3 to 4 times, right, in 2022, and the stock market liked that. I think it's and they're also going to roll back a lot of the programs, the benefits that came with COVID, and I think that the economy is flourishing. There's a lot of demand and a lot of uncertainty in supply, but the problem is that we've got a growing population. Although it didn't grow as much last year, we've still got a very much a young population that's coming up that's going to need housing and cars and major goods and things like that. And with such low inventories, it's going to take a long time to catch up. It doesn't happen overnight. So in terms of predictions, higher prices, but and higher interest rates. But right now, interest rates are so low; it's free money, and that's had its own sort of dynamic. Like if you look at our chemical industry, the mergers and acquiring of things is out of control.
Yep.
Name the price. Everybody's getting rolled up. Everybody's buying. Doesn't matter the price because interest rates or the cost of money is so low. So there's a lot of impacts that higher interest rates will have, but you're talking a quarter point, maybe times 3, 3/4 of a point.
Which is still crazy low.
It's still pretty low.
It's still crazy low.
Yeah,
I mean, my first mortgage was at 9%, and that was only in 2000, so that's only 21 years ago, and now we're down at, what are you getting for interest rates? And
2.65.
That's free money.
That's
you know what I mean? And
Latin America is double digits, like 13, 14%.
Right now.
Yeah, right now.
Is that higher or lower than it has been, or is that
It's lower.
Yeah.
It's usually 18.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was talking to my dad the other day. He's like, credit card, how much do you pay for the credit card? He's like, yeah, 31. I'm like, that's a low.
31%.
That's low.
Wow.
That's a low rate. Yeah. So like free money. The US has free money.
Right.
Yeah, it's a wild thing, and then he compared to our neighbors down south, that's wild. Yeah. I didn't know that, but it's it's free money. It's and that's been holding up the economy for quite a long time. So hopefully they won't raise it up too much where we have, major impacts, but they're using it to battle inflation. And I think rather than raise interest rates, they should do something about the trucking issue, about we did pass the infrastructure bill that should help. We need better roads and bridges and trains and tracks and things like that. But really we need something right now. We need something to help right now. And honestly, the only thing that I can think of is to revise the policies for people that from Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, et cetera, that were the backbone of our trucking industry to maybe come in and help us.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to come and help with the supply chain and you're from a foreign country, give a temporary visa. You know, certainly do the background checks, certainly do the protocols that we need to keep safe. But things need to happen right now in order to prevent a disaster, you know. So, you know, and I'm kind of disappointed that that's not being, you know, and I'm sure it's being discussed, but there's such pushback about, you know, anything that has to do with border control. So
how it looks in the politics.
That's the only thing that I
optics
can
and-
personally come up with as a potential solution, you know, because young kids want to play video games and you know, go on social media, and they don't want to drive trucks.
Well, and
You know,
didn't we hear too that if you're under the age of 21, you can't cross state line. You have to. You're only allowed.
That's something
CDL
that could be
within-
like, I mean, I know a lot of very responsible 18-year-olds that could, you know, and the roads need to be safe. I get that. But
Right.
But
it's,
if you
you know,
can drive within your state, why can't you?
Yeah, crossing a line. I mean, if
I'm
anything,
sure
it
there's a
should
good
be.
reason, but
And you might be right, but I mean, it's like anything else. You know, if maybe make a certain radius that they want you to stick within, or you have to have
Yeah.
X amount of hours, or just something.
stop
because-
testing for marijuana. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you can't drive a truck if you smoked pot a month ago. Like, stop that. You know, like, I mean, there's things that can be done right now, you know, to help this situation. And it's just not being really addressed. It's not being, even though I'm sure it's being screamed at, you know, governors and senators and presidents and all that sort of stuff, but there's nothing being done.
Yeah.
And it's just shocking to me.
yeah. Again, I think looking ahead for next year, the importing and exporting will continue to be a question. Trucking will continue to be a problem, especially in and around some of these big ports. We had just talked with Joe about the kind of major ports and some of these secondary ports that have been a little bit more popular as trying to get material closer to the actual end customer or the warehouse as possible. So some of these secondary ports have been a little bit more popular. I think importing and exporting will still be a big concern and question mark with some of the port delays, with the China tariff staying in place, seeing how that impacts the U.S., seeing how that impacts Mexico and Latin America, and that'll continue to be, I'm sure, a big competitive avenue. Seems like the overall note, though, is just port delays are going to be here. They're going to happen. If something used to take 8 weeks, 9 weeks to get here, it's now going to take 10 weeks, 11 weeks, 12 weeks. It just kind of is what it is, and that's what people should be planning for. I know we talk a lot about, you know, bringing in the dicey or other raw materials, and, you know, if it used to be 8 weeks door to door to a customer, it's now 10 weeks or 12 weeks, and that just is what it is.
Yeah, and we've been telling people that for a long time now, and you know, I don't expect that change based on what the guys at TLC are telling us and our other you know, freight partners and supply partners, and you
Yeah.
know, so just plan on long lead times
Yeah.
for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, one of the main things we've seen, you know, the hangover from all these problems is you know, we look at shore tanks. The price of that has doubled and tripled. You know, this is something that's going to continue to affect costs in general. You know, domestic producers, there's not enough of them to keep up with demand, our own demand domestically in most cases. So there is, you know, a reason that we have to import a lot of different goods, and the cost of ISOs has increased, the cost of trucking has increased. I think that's the worst right now is drayage out of the ports. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to touch it because, again, electronic logging mandates. You show up at a port and you sit there for 3 hours. That's 3 hours out of your day.
Yep.
You know, so they've seen a further demand on tankage. You know, people need more tankage, needs storage, more local storage. You know, Midwest on the oceans and things like that. The price of that has gone up tremendously.
Yeah.
Rail cars, you know, again, cost of that has gone up. Delays. There's more rail cars on the track. So, yeah, so I think that 2022 is going to be the hangover from from what we've seen the last couple of years, and a lot of these things that we've been talking about, we will continue to talk about.
Kind of on both the import and export front as well as the price uncertainty point. Nicole, with the package plasticizers, have you had pushback on people with where package pricing is at, or are people just appreciative to get material, or what have you seen on that front?
So I think it's been, we've seen a couple things. When customers who typically buy bulk can't get bulk, and they're looking at packaged alternatives. I think that they're a little surprised that they can't get the same bulk pricing for packaged materials. So that's
people that haven't bought totes in the past and don't understand the price differences.
Yeah, and I mean just to say it, you have the packaging itself, and then the cost to put the material from the bulk truck into the totes, into the drums, whatever it may be. Yeah. There's all costs associated with that. So I think that's kind of where they're a little like sticker shocked at first, but we usually have a lot of customers that come back and say, hey, you know what? That is a great option, because otherwise it's going to cost me more if I have to do a plant shutdown, or if I can't get, all these raw materials in that I need. Yeah. And I think they weigh the balances and say, okay, it's not going to change, but it's good to know that option's there. Yeah. So it's definitely opened a lot of eyes of people, but the initial pushback isn't as bad once they realize that that's sometimes their only option.
Yeah, but a great value add for TCC, and something I think a lot of our customers and everyone should be taking a look at, is just kind of getting creative with their supply chains, whether that's looking at totes for the first time, even if you got to pay a little bit more, have some totes on the floor for backup inventory, look at short-term storage, just kind of get creative with your supply chains. You kind of have to adapt and move with the times, and that's just kind of how we're looking at supply.
Definitely.
One thing we've all been working on and talking a lot about here is hiring, is jobs, is careers, looking for people, qualified people that are friendly and talented and qualified for some of these sales or customer service or finance roles. We're obviously working on hiring currently for pretty much all roles here at our office in Jamestown, Rhode Island, but I know we're hearing from a lot of customers that keeping people on the floor, hiring for new positions, having people available in the event of someone going out with COVID or sicknesses or maternity leave or whatever the case might be. But hiring and getting people on the floor seems like it's continued to be a big concern.
Yeah, I think it's challenging across the board, whether it's manufacturing or distribution or really any industry you talk to. Hiring's a problem, which is funny because, unemployment numbers seem to still be pretty high, so there are bodies to fill those positions hypothetically, but they're not, I don't know, there's something not connecting there.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, a lot of it has to do with people got so used to either being able to work remote, and that's not the case for all industries now. Everyone wants to be, the majority of people like to be that face-to-face interaction, and as Ben mentioned, like we're always looking for, active go-getter personalities who, I mean, I don't know about you guys. Actually, I do kind of know about you guys. But, when we were sitting at home for that, brief period, it was not the same environment. Like we thrive being around other people, and especially other people we like. So I think that has been challenging where, some people, which is totally fine, but they want to be in their home environment and, their day-to-day life and activities. So I think that's going to be a challenge as well, because a lot of companies are asking, oh, no, we're going to bring you back to the office now. So people are going, whoa, yeah. What do we do? But yeah, just definitely putting a big emphasis on, getting good people to, surround and grow the team with.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the spring to making a push with hiring, and especially looking at some local universities and talking to juniors and seniors in college and seeing, what other companies are doing to try to attract talent and what some of these students are saying or looking for, what they want out of a career or workplace. I think it's going to be interesting come springtime to make that push and see what people are saying.
Yeah, we've been very lucky. We haven't really lost anyone, knock on wood, but I think who wouldn't want this job? I don't know. I enjoy chemical sales. I enjoy what I do. It's challenging at times, but it's also very rewarding. And I think we're all people persons, and we enjoy dealing with people. We love creating solutions for people and getting them supply. And I think we've been fortunate in customer service and logistics that we've been able to fill out roles that we've needed there. We've got a great sustainability team. We've got a great sales team. We've got a nice mix of commissioned agents and salaried sales managers. So personally, we've been lucky, but we're gonna continue to grow our sales team with the mergers and acquisitions in our industry. That we feel that there's an opportunity to grow. I think we will grow with our producing partners. That's the easiest way to grow, to keep them happy, to grow in their portfolio of chemicals and a focus on anything from commodity to specialty. I think we really do a good job at all of the above, and I think that with the mergers and acquisitions, it's given us an opportunity to shine, to show that we can really deliver when it comes to all of these impacts that we've seen, whether it's been disease or logistics or whatever. We've been able to really, have an impact on the supply chain, and being a small-ish company, we're nimble, we can change. But yeah, we're going to be hiring in sales because, we're going into a mode where if we're going to grow, we're going to need new salespeople. And I think to Nicole's point that the work from home thing was, in my opinion, it was for the most part a failure. I was talking to one of our sales guys and he says, I golf every day with my son. He's working from home. and it's like, and then, I hate to say it, but I've got friends and family that say, they come into town and they're at my house or whatever, and they're supposed to be working and they're not, so it's like, I think that has an impact, after a while. It certainly has an impact on businesses, and it's not fair, it's not fair for people to act that way, so, but people are scared, and I think that media's created that. We don't necessarily need to be scared. We need to be cautious, and we need to have certain protocols in place. We're still masking. We're still doing things that, are logical in terms of fighting a pandemic. But we need to get back out there. We need to. We're a people industry, and we need to get back with people so we can help them to create solutions in these tough times.
Well, and speaking of getting back out there, we're last but not least on this list of our thoughts and projections for next year is the trade show piece. I know we got back to some shows in the second half of 2021 with the AFPM, some of the Chemicals America shows. I know you guys were down at the fertilizer show. All, I think, would be considered a success given the circumstances. But excited to get back out. I think everyone at this table will vouch for the fact that they're excited to get back out, get to some of these trade shows and conferences, get back to sort of a normal trade show schedule with the normal AFPM timing, the EPCA, the APLA, the American Coating Show, which this year falls on, the Chemicals America shows, and get back out to some sort of normal cadence of traveling and shows. And I know I'm excited. I'm sure you're excited for it too.
I am, yeah. 2021, I mean, we did a decent amount of shows, and although the numbers were off, I thought that they were all, like you said, successes. It was just great to get out and see folks, and had some really good conversations at all the shows. So even though that the numbers were off, I think that most people would consider them to be a success.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, especially you got that quality versus the quantity aspect of it, where it was the quality of the conversations and the relationships that you were building because you were out there and there wasn't as many people. So then you can really kick that into gear this year and continue to grow those relationships and
well, I hate to throw shade on this one, but I don't know if it's going to happen. I mean,
don't say that.
I really don't. I mean, I was at our favorite sushi restaurant last night. You all know what I'm talking about, and because we go there often, and it was empty. And she said it's been absolutely empty the last couple of weeks because, once again, the media and the circus that's going on is scaring people. And we've heard shows that are already being questioned. And, the vaccine, we're supposed to have a vaccine to not get sick. Well, we're getting sick with the vaccine. So, and the variant are finding ways around. I hate to be Debbie Downer, but like, I just...
Devil's advocate, you got to play both sides.
I mean, we have,
it's going to be interesting.
It's interesting to see like travel hitting all-time back to record highs and all that sort of stuff, yet people aren't going to eat sushi on a Tuesday night or whatever. It's like, where are we going? And from the beginning, what I've said is that there needs to be a treatment for COVID, and hopefully that's coming. The vaccine has been a success in keeping people from dying, but it has not been a success in keeping the virus from spreading. Yep. And let's be realistic about that. It's not the magic potion that they presented it was going to be. It's not. It's so there's got to be a shift in how we manage this pandemic, and I think treatment hopefully will be that shift in testing and things like that. But it's going to be with us for 2022 and beyond.
Yeah, I think hopefully we get back to some of these in-person shows sooner rather than later. I think regardless of when that happens, some of these virtual meetings and Zoom calls and things like that are going to be part of the workflow more so than they were pre-COVID. You know, whether it's meeting with customers in Mexico in between traveling down there more frequently, or getting together with our sales team that are in the field more frequently, something that we hadn't really done in the past. It kind of expedited that. So we're going to, I think, still be spending more time on Zoom and GoTo, even if it's 10% more than normal. But that's something
I think even beyond that, it just adds value to distribution.
Yeah.
You know, you need to have a regional partner for distribution of your products, and being, you know, global manufacturers that we're regional to South America and North America. You know, utilize us as a resource, you know, in these times, in these difficult times. So I think, you know, I think we're still going to have tools that'll help us somewhat get together as humans, but, you know, will there be an EPCA in October?
We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
You know, we'll see. Maybe it'll be in the summer, because it seems more and more that this is a seasonal problem. You know, you're seeing the Southern Hemisphere right now. COVID rates are way down. People are outside. They're not indoors. It's hot. It's, you know, that sort of stuff. So maybe it'll be more seasonal for shows, because we saw big numbers of shows this summer sort of dwindling, you know, in October and now through Christmas. And so hopefully things will get back to normal. I'm not, you know, totally sure, but, you know, we'll see.
We'll see. Any final thoughts, projections, comments for next year?
Done with the projections. Like I said.
All right, we're good. No, I think, you know, one of our longer episodes, but I think a lot of good stuff in there. A lot happened this year and a lot to pay attention next year. I think we'll have plenty of podcast content coming up in Q1 at least, for sure. So appreciate you guys taking some time this morning. Appreciate everyone for listening, obviously, both for this specific episode as well as hopefully some episodes in the past. If this was your first podcast episode, we appreciate listening and hope you'll follow along next year. But appreciate all your guys' time, you know, today and this year coming on the podcast and chatting, and looking forward to continuing it and growing it next year and seeing what 2022 has to come.
Yeah, I think on behalf of everybody here at the Chemical Company, we wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy New Year.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Feliz Navidad.
Yeah, thank you for sticking with us, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.